The MG42 isn't just a gun. It's an organization machine, and it has one mission. Never let the fire go quiet.
MG42, 10 o'clock. Fire!
If you look at the MG42 as a weapon, you won't see enough. Because the MG42 lives in order who stands where in the squad, who feeds the belt, who swaps the barrel, who covers, how the firing position is prepared, how the firing rhythm is maintained so it can dominate without burning itself out. When everything locks together, firepower stops being a reflex. It becomes a plan. And that's why today we're going to move from the World War I foundation through the MG34 to the MG42 and the Lafette mount to see that its real strength lives in the system. To understand why the MG42 was not just a gun, but a doctrine, we have to return to the foundation it was meant to break: World War I. Back then, the king of defense was the water-cooled Maxim machine gun, powerful, durable, but heavy, and almost born to stand still. It turned a patch of ground into a wall of fire, and that wall dragged Europe down into trenches. Picture the gun crew hauling a tripod of water can and belts of ammunition through mud. Ahead of them, barbed wire and a bare open stretch. Where is mobility? Where is speed? When everything must be carried, set down, dug in, and only then fired. The old world won by standing still. But war doesn't stand still forever. The battlefield was leaving mud behind and stepping into speed. As the front moved beyond trench lines, warfare entered the age of mechanization and maneuver formations. The heavy Maxim was still useful in defense, but it pulled tactics back into the slow rhythm of 1916. Germany in the 1930s saw a different equation. Victory belonged to whoever could move fast, shift direction fast, and combine tanks, infantry, artillery into one continuous attacking tempo. Blitzkrieg was not just a slogan, it was a technical requirement. 60 kilos doesn't go with speed is a simple conclusion, and a cold one. So they needed a machine gun that could keep up with every step carried on the march, mounted on vehicles, in pursuit, and fixed in place when holding terrain. One weapon, many roles, not for show, but to synchronize with a new way of fighting. And that need opened the door for the first of its kind to be born. The MG34 arrived as a masterwork of engineering, air-cooled, belt-fed, quick-change barrel, and multi-purpose. It followed the infantry in attack, held the line in defense, in a light configuration, then went on to the Lafette mount to dominate a killing ground. It sat in tank turrets mounted on vehicles, and could even be used as light anti-aircraft. At that moment, it had almost no equal in flexibility. But refinement came with a price. Many parts were machined from solid steel, demanding labor hours and skilled craftsmen. Tight tolerances made it temperamental in dust, mud, and extreme cold. In a war of attrition, perfection became a burden. The MG34 was beautiful, but war does not reward beauty. When the war demanded more, faster, cheaper, Germany was forced to do something that sounded like betrayal of its own engineering tradition, break the rules of design in order to survive. The turn came in 1942. The MG42 chose stamped steel, less glamorous but more practical. It sharply reduced manufacturing time and effort compared to finely machined designs, opening the path to mass production under shortage and pressure. More importantly, it was built to take filth, to be handled easily, to be trained quickly, a weapon born for the battlefield, not for a display case. And then people heard it. The MG42 had a very high rate of fire, often cited around over 1,000 rounds per minute in many sources, so seamless that many felt it sounded like cloth being ripped. Allied soldiers gave it nicknames heavy with dread. The other side had names no less cold. But the point isn't the nickname, it's the effect. You hear it before you see it. And that sound alone is enough to throw off heartbeats and the rhythm of an advance. Even so, the Germans understood a high rate of fire does not mean hold the trigger and forget it. In training and manuals, they emphasized short bursts, controlled tempo, because the price of speed arrives immediately: heat. In a German squad in World War II, the MG42 was not a supporting role. It was the center of the heartbeat of the whole group. A squad, often around 10 men, was arranged like a machine with strict order. At the core was the machine gun team gunner, assistant gunner, and ammunition bearer. Around them were the squad leader with an MP40 and the riflemen with Kar 98Ks. That layout states one cold truth. It's not that the machine gun accompanies the soldier accompanies the machine gun. Every action on the battlefield points toward a single objective: sustained fire, disciplined at the right moment. Ammunition belts are passed hand to hand like a job learned long ago. A glowing barrel is swapped cleanly. The ammo runner sprints out and back on ragged breath while the riflemen stay tight to shield and support. There is no excess, only coordination. One gun, one tempo, one squad. And when that tempo runs smoothly, the MG42 stops being a single weapon. It becomes a doctrine compressed into a few men, a few motions, and one principle: keep fire where it must be, when it must be, without interruption. If the MG42 is speed, then the first cost of speed is heat. After only a short period of sustained firing, the barrel becomes so hot that the shot pattern begins to loosen, handling turns dangerous, and the risk of malfunctions rises exactly when you need firepower most. On the range, they teach short bursts, controlled tempo, so the barrel can breathe. But the battlefield rarely lets you follow the lesson. Targets appear in flashes, comrades call for cover, and every second you slow down can be paid in blood. So with the MG42, the question is not how fast can you fire, but how do you keep the tempo without breaking the fire? And this is where the MG42 reveals its nature as a system. It doesn't just fire, it forces human beings to operate at its rhythm. The Germans turned barrel changes into a survival reflex: open the side latch, pull the hot barrel, insert the new motions drilled again and again until they happen in seconds, in dust and smoke, in strain, in the crack of rounds slicing overhead. The assistant gunner stays close not to help, but to hold the tempo. The spare barrel is always ready. Gloves barrel bag. Where the barrel goes, everything is arranged, so that when the gun starts to choke, the squad can make it breathe again immediately. There is no poetry here. Only one rule: the fire is not allowed to go silent. But barrel changes solve only half the problem. The other half is rougher ammunition. A high-rate machine gun eats ammunition the way fire eats oxygen. Heavy ammo boxes, long belts, sweating runners. This is the real image that follows the MG42. And it's here that genius often lives in small details, tighter ammo containers to resist moisture handles placed, so you can run without snagging ways of attaching ammo boxes to straps or to the mount for fast handling. Those minor things decide a brutal question. When the fight drags on, does the fire live or die? The MG42 teaches a blunt lesson. Effectiveness doesn't begin with the first shot, it begins with organization. From the need to keep continuous fire, we move to what can be seen as the MG42's silent heart, the Lafette mount. This is no longer a simple bipod. It is a platform that turns the machine gun into something close to a light cannon, more stable, smoother to adjust, and enabling the crew to plan the path of bullets. In defense, the Germans pre-mapped firing zones, creating overlapping fire corridors. When the MG42 sits on the Lafette, fire is no longer reflex. It becomes deliberate, ordered firepower, an extended arm of the position itself. And that is when you understand the gun is not just in a soldier's hands. It has been integrated into an entire tactical blueprint. Among the things that make the MG42 even colder are mechanisms on the mount that allow the crew to maintain a controlled sweep, a steady tempo of fire, across zones calculated in advance. It isn't always identical in every configuration, but the idea is consistent. Turn an open stretch of ground into a place that is unsafe, even when you can't see anyone. Add to that recoil-reducing and vibration-separating details that help keep the sight picture steadier. And when needed, the crew can fire from a more concealed posture using cover, so the enemy feels as if something invisible is holding them in place. You are not just facing a gunner. You are stepping into a trap already installed with steel ammunition and discipline. On the front line, the MG42 wasn't just a tool that caused casualties. It left a psychological imprint that many Allied veterans would still describe later in cautious tones. Training materials sometimes tried to reassure soldiers the sound is more frightening than the reality. But the battlefield rarely gives you the privilege of believing reassurance. Some things you only need to hear once to understand. And the MG42 was often one of them. What makes it haunting is not a single shot, but the tempo of fire. The Germans often prepared multiple firing positions, set aside fallback spots, fired a few bursts, then shifted. One gun team but operated that way, it could make the enemy feel as if fire was coming from several directions at once. You think it's a whole platoon, but it's really one gun organized correctly. There's nothing mystical about it. It's discipline habit, a system trained until it becomes reflex. And in battles like Normandy, where firing fields could overlap, that effect was driven to its maximum. Every step forward became a calculation: advance 1 more meter or stay down 1 more second. Every time you raise your head, you gamble. Not everyone gets cut down immediately, but many are pinned by the sense that the open ground ahead is no longer earth, but a zone measured in firepower. When you cannot move, time starts to work for the other side. And that is the real weight of it. There are stories that recall how much ammunition was fired in a day and how many men fell around key points. Those numbers sometimes differ depending on the source and the memory of those involved. But the core remains consistent when fire is placed correctly. It doesn't just inflict losses, it can lock an entire axis of advance in place. The MG42 didn't just shoot bodies, it shot the tempo of an attack. And once that tempo breaks, the battle shifts into a different kind of fight. Many armies could capture an MG42 on the battlefield, take it back to a lab, strip it down piece by piece, measure every spring and every sight. But what was far harder to capture was what stood behind the gun: the squad organization, the ammunition preparation, the barrel change routine, the firing tempo, and the way a machine gun was made, the operating center of an entire unit. Because the MG42 was never merely equipment. It was a habit, a discipline, a shared heartbeat. Without those pieces, the weapon becomes a shell, still able to fire, but no longer a doctrine. You can hold it in your hands, but you cannot automatically possess the whole system forged from range to battlefield. And that is why the MG42's influence did not vanish after the war. It quietly moved forward, seeping into how people thought about machine guns, optimize production, simplify handling, prioritize reliability in brutal conditions, and most importantly, treat the machine gun as the infantry's pivot, not something off to the side, as support. In West Germany, the MG3 carried that spirit forward with a new standard cartridge. Across the ocean, American machine gun projects also absorbed lessons from wartime German engineering. Not by copying it exactly, but by learning how to answer the same question: how do you keep firepower always ready, always in rhythm, always able to match the unit's tactical tempo? 80 years later, that philosophy still survives, because it works. Not just powerful fire, but fire in rhythm. Not just weapons, but organization. Not just a man firing, but a system. The MG42 was not just a gun. It was a system, design, organization, logistics, and position. All of it speaks one cold sentence: the fire is not allowed to go silent.